Welcome to the Disruptive Podcast by Minority Innovation Weekend. Minority Innovation Weekend is a weekend summit dedicated to aiding minority innovators launch tech-focused startups, exploring emerging technologies, and showcasing tech startups that have a minority founder or co-founder. During each episode, we will discuss innovation, news about tech startup, as well as the startup ecosystem, and interview people of color throughout the startup ecosystem. Welcome to the MIW Disruptive Podcast, hosted by Michelle, Sir Walter, and Jerome. Today we got two special guests. We have this person or these people are people to watch in the healthcare tech field. They're part of the Sonavi Labs. Ellington West is the CEO, and Dottin-Haley is the Chief Business Development Officer. How are you doing?
Oh, we're great.
Okay.
Greetings from home.
Okay.
Super excited to have you both on the MIW Disrupt podcast. Really excited to learn a little bit more about the work that you're doing. So I'll get us kicked off. So if you could just please tell us a little bit about Sonavi Labs and the significance behind your name, your company's name, and a little bit about the company's origin.
Sure, absolutely. So the company is actually, the name is really about the sound of life. So son being sound and vie being French life. So we as a company are examining the sounds of life. And really what that means, we're focused on the acoustical signatures of lung sounds. So really anything that a physician can diagnose with a stethoscope, our artificial intelligence enabled device can replicate that and really produce with even a higher accuracy than some physicians a phenomenal diagnosis. So we founded the company about 2.5 years ago, but a lot of our work started 6 years ago in my father's lab at Johns Hopkins University.
Ellington, what phase of the company are you in right now?
Yeah, sure. So we are doing two really great things right now. We are gearing up to really launch our first commercialized product. We have FDA approval pending. We submitted for that about 20 days ago. So it was expedited because of our work with COVID. So we are expecting maybe another 15 to 20 days until we get a positive, hopefully, response from them. And then we'll be able to fulfill a lot of our pre-orders. And we're also in a fundraising phase. So we kicked off our seed round about 6 months ago. To date, we've raised about $2.1 million just in this round alone. And so we're pulling in all of our resources and we're getting ready to get this device out and in the hands of the people that we really believe need it the most.
Okay. So your company recently won an international pitch competition. What was that experience like?
It was phenomenal. So it was our second time attending Arab Health. And Arab Health is the second largest healthcare conference in the world. And we pitched their Innovate. It's this really great pitch competition that they do across the entire conference. And we came in first place, having the most innovative idea at the conference. So that was really phenomenal to be recognized on a global stage, not just as a woman, not just a woman of color, but also, repping a wonderful technology from Baltimore. So it was really a powerful experience for us. And then it's about really what that translated into in terms of exposure and distribution opportunities, as well as investment opportunities.
So according to a report by Digital Undivided's Project Diane, firms started by Black women receive only 0.006% of VC funding raised by startups between 2009 and 2017. And one of my big passions is kind of addressing disparities that exist for women and minority-owned firms when it comes to access to funding. Can you talk about your experience fundraising so far and kind of any of the challenges that you faced, or what that journey has looked like for you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that what the statistic that you just shared really illustrates is nothing new to any of us. It is the reality that there are spaces that are created that we were never expected to be in. And now that we are, what does that mean, and how does this narrative begin to change? So I'm fortunate because of not my network, but the people that ground me and root me, my parents, my grandparents, my family members, because I've always known that you have to push, that you're going to have to make this space your own. Mm-hmm. And having that confidence, having that is really, it's been a differentiator for me, I think, in our success. And that's been because I haven't been afraid to look the reality in its face and say, I'm pushing back and this is where I fit in here. I think that we're seeing a beautiful transition in Black-owned and minority-owned VC funds. I think that we are taking a lot of control back with our own capital and really reinvesting and investing in wonderful solutions, whether that be consumer products or medical devices. So seeing that shift has been helpful, and I'm optimistic about the direction, but I know that I have to do well to then sell my company, to then start my own fund, to then focus on all of us that need the support, because it's one thing to have an idea, but it's nothing without support and capital behind it. And we really have to start changing that discussion, and we have to start owning that, because what I also struggle with is, okay, great. So now after we close this round of funding, we're gearing up for a Series A, which is all VC funding. And I have to decide as a leader, do we want to take this money? What is the cost of their money? And how will it ultimately impact the trajectory of our company? Because with their money will come a board seat. And with that, opinions, positions that may not be in alignment with our goals. And so it then makes an already difficult situation, which is raising capital, even more difficult, where then we have to be incredibly selective with the limited population that is even willing to engage with us, right? And so when I am speaking on panels or when I'm invited to opportunities, it's difficult for me because I'm always the youngest person, and I'm always the only woman, and I'm always the only African American. So it's already this whole, who do I speak for? Who do I represent? And then also, well, you're going to have to prove yourself, which we all know 20 times harder. You have to, whatever traction a company out of USC with Chad can do, I have to do 3 times as much, 20 times as much. And so, but look, that's the stamina that we have trained ourselves to have. And now we're just responding in ways where we're having these conversations. We're getting all of our innovators locally and internationally involved and invested. And I really see this as a innovation renaissance. I think that we went through this beautiful renaissance period with art and music, and we're looking at it now in a different form of expression. And I think that's being matched very beautifully with also having financial institutions with our leadership helping really marry these two fantastic opportunities.
Thank you. Powerful.
I have a question about your technology. Not to give away your special sauce, but was AI part of the original product, or is it something that kind of grew through pivoting and upgrades and updates?
It was a really interesting process for us. So initially, the Gates Foundation had kind of put out a challenge, and they said that there is this outrageous infant mortality rate as it relates to pneumonia, and pneumonia is detectable and treatable. So there has to be an intervention. There has to be something that we can do to increase access to diagnostics and to do it quickly. And so when this all started, it was about increasing access to care. And we didn't really know what that would mean. I mean, this was really Jim West and Ian McLean and the team at Hopkins that set out to say, okay, what's it going to take? And when you have these brilliant machine learning experts in a basement lab at Hopkins, they're going to say the easiest thing we can do is just replicate the human that we're trying to increase the access to and put it in a small device. So I think that machine learning was always an element. AI always had to be involved in this conversation. It was actually more so that we built the hardware of the device around the AI. And then the technology revealed itself to us in very beautiful ways. So initially we were just focusing on low and middle income countries, and we were just focusing on really empowering frontline community health workers. And then we realized, well, if this can work with community health workers in rural Malawi, we have the exact same mortality rates in Baltimore City as it relates to our adolescents, specifically with asthma. So what we had to say was, if we're dealing with the same problems right here, how does this translate? And the technology surpasses all socioeconomic barriers. It really translates through all languages. So it's that universal kind of thread. And we had to say that from a commercialization standpoint, and for us to reach and be successful as it related to our bottom line, we knew that we had to focus on very important telehealth applications here where, you know, payers and insurance companies would see the value, reimburse for the device. But then also on that community health worker side of things, we had to make sure that the device was easy to use and easily accessible. So the way that AI is transforming care delivery, and because it is continuously learning, puts us in such a unique position where we can push an update to the device from anywhere in the world. And so as we begin to identify additional diseases that this device can be supportive with, we can just pop it right over. And so it was about increasing access in a way that we don't believe was explored prior to this in this capacity.
Awesome. So have you partnered with other businesses? And if so, how do you leverage those partnerships?
Yeah, it's interesting. I like to look at partnerships in two ways. One on a local level, and then the second in terms of strategic partnerships that we are really working on developing just for our own growth and scale. So on the local side, we've been very fortunate to work with some Baltimore-based companies, whether that's Harbor Designs and Manufacturing or Dene Prosthetics, which is a 3D printing kind of company that we've been working with. They've since changed their name from Dene to I honestly, off the top of my head, don't know. Winston's going to kill me, but I will correct that later. But it's just been really important to start locally, whether that be through partnerships at Hopkins or even thinking about as a young innovator in Baltimore, the resources that exist for us. So whether that's ETC or TEDCO or the Minority Hub, it's really about starting there and then leveraging those relationships to grow. And then on a global scale, we've been fortunate enough to partner with Johnson & Johnson, and we're working on solidifying a partnership with Philips also. So I like to look at it as we know we need giants to move us forward, but we also know that there's so much value here that we have to, when we want to partner, so that we're all elevated, so that when this large partner comes in, we already have 6 other Baltimore-based or Maryland-based or minority-based companies that will now have increased visibility.
So one of the things that I thought was really interesting when we first started our conversation was the origin of the company. You said 6 years ago it started in a basement in Baltimore or at Johns Hopkins. Can you tell us more about why that happened, how it happened, personalize the story a little bit? Because I see the use, I see the need. I would absolutely invest in this company, but I'd love to understand a little bit more of just the beginning and that first piece.
Absolutely. So My father, Jim West, he is a world-renowned acoustician. He actually invented the electret microphone. So it's the microphone I'm using right now, and it's the microphone in every cell phone that we use on a daily basis. And he did this, he invented that when he was back at Bell Labs in New Jersey. He retired, and then he said, you know what, there's more to do. I'm going to join faculty at Hopkins. So he did. And while he was there, he just really wanted to double down on resourceful, low-cost solutions that would be able to be deployed in specifically communities like ours. And so he partnered with, or not partnered, but Ian McLean, his student, really was this phenomenal, and still is, this phenomenal hardware designer and mechanical engineer. And they just came together after this Gates challenge was presented, and they said, we really can do something about this. Let's pull all of our resources together and make it happen. So then my dad's calling me, and he's like, listen, Elle, we created this amazing thing, but here's the reality, is that if we don't create a team around it, it's going to stay on a shelf in a basement at Hopkins. So I'm thinking about it, I'm talking to him, and at the time I was the director of sales for a national healthcare company. So I'm like, okay, like I know commercialization, I know sales, this is my bread and butter. Why don't we start a company? So Ian and I co-founded the company. My father is a scientific advisor, and funny enough, the former dean of the Whiting School of Engineering at Hopkins was my dad's former student as well. And so she was the one that brought him to Hopkins. So it's kind of when you know that something is supposed to happen, right? It's just, I don't believe in coincidences. And the serendipity of all of this was just too real. So, you know, I decided to quit my job and just, you know, go all in on this. And it has been the joy of my life. It means so much for me to be able to continue a legacy that has shaped every fiber of who I am. And to know the power of what was created by this man who now we have the ability on a second run. He's 89 and this is a second run, right? Like that's what excites me so much. And is so encouraging about the sheer brilliance that's within all of us and just really tapping into it and going for it. That's what it comes down to. And I think that's what I learned from my dad, that his message is spoken through his work. That when people say, there's no way that you can do this, this isn't going to happen, no one has done it before. And he's like, look, second time, did it again. So in my mind, it's exciting and such a driving force when you have such a personal connection to your mission, you know?
Ellington, your story is really inspiring, the company story as well. Who inspires you as a tech founder?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that I look at it a lot of ways. It's so, the first person that always comes to my mind without a doubt is my father. I mean, I can't escape the reality of that. I mentioned that he's 89, but he's 89 and he gets up and he goes to the gym every day. He still goes to Hopkins every day. And this man has a walker. So when I talk about motivation and somebody that removes all excuses, born in Jim Crow South, still, where is he now? Can barely walk, but still goes to the gym and is still creating. He puts it all on the table and leaves me without a single excuse that I could form that would justify me not doing what I need to do. So hands down, my greatest motivator and inspiration.
Right. Going back to your father, who's a great inventor, Dr. James West. So how do you define like that demarcation line between, you know, the business side as well as that father-daughter side?
Yeah, so two things. One, the beauty of just legal boundaries. So because he's still at Hopkins, everything has to be separate. So he's an advisor. But also, I think that it's about respect. And and that's how it should be across the board for your team, right? Like, I think that it's important to bring in quality, whether they are your family member or not, right? We're ranking everyone on merit first always. And then it's about respect. Because if you are bringing them in based on merit, then you have an established respect and you respect the space and the domain that they cover. So, I mean, our team, because we have to have free labor, we have Ian's mother is actually our chief data officer, and that's just because of her deep domain expertise in informatics. But the reality is that you have to build walls, parameters, and if you're going to lead, you lead and you define those roles. And of course, there's going to be tension, and everyone has their own opinions. But I think that isn't unique to a relationship of father and daughter or father and son, but rather just, the nature of being human. So I don't see it as a unique challenge than anything else of the human experience, is what I would chalk it up to say.
Gotcha.
So one of the things that I've talked about before is when you invest in minority entrepreneurs and women-owned entrepreneurs, you're investing in those communities as well. And as I'm looking at your website and seeing the brilliance that your team brings to this company, I also noticed that all of these folks are either women or people of color, right? So can you tell me how having a diverse team has really differentiated you from other companies as you have grown and are scaling your company?
Absolutely. I mean, there is a lens, voice, and perspective that comes from doing the unconventional thing, which is having a diverse team that is reflective of who we are and who I am. So it's interesting because it poses a challenge, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. When we show up to a boardroom and there is no white male present, it's uncomfortable for some people. And so for us, it's if you're uncomfortable here and now, then none of us should be here. And so we've had to make very hard strategic decisions based on people's level of comfort. But for us, the value that is reflected in the diversity of our team is what has moved us forward, because we're dealing with different experiences. We are looking at and approaching and problem solving very differently. So I hope that as we scale up, that our team becomes even more diverse. I mean, we value the opinions of most people. And so I think that it's important for our team, because we should also be, we also need to shake it up a little bit, but I think that we will always be predominantly reflective of the community that we are from. And I think that it's because of opportunities. If what's important to me are certain core values, that's what is through our team. That's our culture. And so that has to be protected, because that's where our creativity comes from. And I think that that's also what makes us move at the speed that we are going, because it is unique as young as we are to have accomplished as much as we have. And I think that comes from the stamina that's within, the work ethic, and the diverse lens that our team provides.
As a tech founder, what surprised you most about the role being CEO?
How much I thought I knew. So it's probably been one of the best and most humbling experiences of my life, because sure, I had this, I was great at one thing and now we're doing 1,000 things. And so I think that knowing what you don't know and being open to finding those right people to help you grow, and to be open to growth, and to be okay with being wrong, probably the most valuable things. Because when ego gets in the way, I think that it just is so toxic. So I had to learn how to check myself quickly and to learn from everyone around me. And I think that I am so much better now from listening and really just being shaped by the people that I choose to surround myself by. But what I also will say is that I was surprised naively by how intimidating and tremendous the burden feels of being in this space and being young and being Black and being female. It's something that, especially from coming from a corporate environment, I thought that I was already prepared for. But there's a big difference when you are representing your brand, your culture, your mission, your technology, and not a pre-approved, easily digested entity that people are already comfortable with. So it's been a true lesson for me in my own strengths and my own weaknesses, because they are showing themselves in ways that I didn't know they could.
Yeah, I don't want to necessarily leave Brandon without a question as well. So, quick question for you as the Chief Business Development Officer. Like, what strategies are you using to get that technology out there? Like, get people more knowledgeable about your product?
Yeah. I mean, as Ellington said, and as she's described to you guys, we've been really thoughtful about how we built the company, about how we approach not only the partners that we want to invest, but then also the companies and partners that we want to collaborate and work with. So one of the first things that we did as a medical device was work to try to get the medical community on board with us. We built partnerships, like she said, with Johns Hopkins, but also with Innova Hospital, because we know that we need physicians to really support us and the technology. We're also working to build, again, those partnerships with Philips and Johnson & Johnson. FindDX, which is another one of our research partners. They're a global, diagnostics leader. And, we really wanted to build the business with, as one of our, Eileen, our Chief Innovation Officer, she calls them barracudas. We're a small fish in a really big pond. And as you can imagine, we've got an uphill battle being a very young and diverse team. And so with getting the medical community on board, with getting these really large global healthcare companies on board, we really think that we're going to be able to make a significant impact. And we'll also be able to get the customers on our side too.
Yeah, I have to say something though, to piggyback off of that, because Brandon won't, and I think that it is such a key differentiator for our growth. And it comes from the essence of who Brandon is and his so unapologetically strong, clear Black self, period. Because we were in The Hague at this Global Entrepreneurship Summit, and the CEO of Philips is in the room. And I'm like, okay, that's it. Brandon gets up, already had identified him, walked right up to him, shook his hand and said, listen, I need to tell you about what we're doing. Franz, CEO of Philips, says, why don't we sit down and have lunch? That moment, that confidence, that courage was a pivotal moment in our growth and our success. And, to be a 6-foot-something Black man in the Netherlands and walk straight up face to face. And you know what? And his position is, why not? Why shouldn't I? And why can't I? And that is probably the most valuable lesson that our team has internalized, is that the only thing stopping us and limiting us is our own fear or our own false sense of inadequacy. And as soon as we get over that and walk into the grace, the light, everything that we have within, then guess what? This is why this morning we had a follow-up call with Philips, period. So that's what it comes down to.
Amazing.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Amazing to hear. So is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience of entrepreneurs, of investors, of founders, as you've gone through your journey?
Yeah. I think. Oh, sorry,
yeah,
ahead.
but would love. Go ahead. Would love to hear from both of you.
Brandon, go ahead.
Brandon, go ahead.
Brandon, go ahead.
All right. One of the things that's really stuck with me, we were at it was DC Startup Week event, and I remember sitting in the audience of this panel with VCs and a woman in the audience getting up and asking a question about, basically she was frustrated and exhausted that she had to continue to apply for different pitch competitions and she wasn't winning anything, and questioning whether or not she should still keep applying for grants and pitches and all that. And the thing that stuck with me was the response from the VCs was, you obviously don't have the resources to not apply. So to Ellington's point, why I continue to go for it is because why not? We don't have the time, we don't have the resources to let something go by without making an effort and without making an attempt. And so I encourage every entrepreneur to start with saying, why not? You ask yourself the question, what would be the benefit if I did this, or what would be the benefit if I didn't? And you're likely to find many more benefits by doing it than, letting something sit on the shelf. And so go for it, and, your team will appear, your parachute will appear if you jump off of that cliff. Leap in the net will appear, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's it. I couldn't have said it better. I am in complete agreement that it is about tenacity. It's the recognition that it's late nights, it's hard, and it can seem at times almost impossible. But then you have a day, you have a moment, and you recognize, and you're re-energized and you're refueled to know that, I can do this. You constantly prove to yourself that you're so much better than you ever thought that you were, and you're doing things a year later that you can't believe you've accomplished. And I mean, I like to think about it like, a child walking. They go from crawling to walking to running. This is our path. This is what happens. And you become this refined, amazing entity through all of your hard work. And so I don't know, I'm just so proud of our team and the work and everything that we've been able to accomplish. But if you asked me 2.5 years ago, if I thought that I could do this, or if I thought that we would be here, we have surpassed every imaginable milestone and dream that we set in place. And that is just because we had the courage to start, and we didn't stop when it got hard. And so, and you know what? And even if you do fail, so what? Because you did it, you felt it, you enjoyed it, and it was such a powerful and important lesson. And the skills that you learn through that process are so transferable, and they could just be the seeds for the next venture. So yeah. I believe so much in that. I mean, even bringing it back to Jim, my dad, I mean, he has 2 of these world-renowned patents, right? But he has 2,000 other failed inventions. So just think about the work, the time, and the commitment to really get that great thing out there.
Wow. That's a great note to leave on.
Love it.
Yes. But thank you, Ellington. Thank you, Brandon, for joining us today. That wraps up this episode of the Disruptive Podcast by Minority Innovation Weekend. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe. Check us out online at www.minorityinnovationweekend.org and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. MIW 2020 is coming up on Saturday, October 3rd to the 4th, so head on over to www.minorityinnovationweekend.org and register for MIW 2020 today.